What's going on, guys? Andrew of Newbar Gaming back here today with another Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains episode review. Today we're going to be talking about episode 68. Now, before jumping into that, I do want to apologize for the sloppiness of my last cast list coverage, which was on episode 69. I totally missed the fact that Spectre was even in the cast list, on top of just a couple other careless mistakes. But anyway, jumping into today's video, where I did actually write up a mini script, unlike last time. It's been a bit since I've done that, but just to make sure everything's clean. Basically what we have today is going to be I meeting up with Windy and Lightning. This is the first time we were actually introduced to the Lightning Ignis, and what was noticeable about that to me was Windy kind of had the AI program he created for him to be able to ride on that would duel for him, etc. if he was interacting with it, right? Well, Lightning sort of had this as well, but it just showed up as a body of light. Now, what did we see show up as a body of light as well earlier in the show? Well, when Bowman first appeared and snatched the consciousness data outside of Jin, he appeared as a body of light form as well. I don't think they're necessarily tied together, but I wouldn't necessarily rule out that possibility yet either. I'm going to get into that a little bit more in a little while, but essentially you have those two Ignises meeting with I, who's obviously very loyal to Playmaker, and they're essentially telling him, look, humans aren't necessary to us, they violently attacked us before, and some outside force destroyed the Cyverse world. We don't need humans, so let's go ahead and eliminate them. We were designed to be their successors anyway, let's just go ahead and fulfill that prophecy. I, on the other hand, is kind of shifting away from that. He's like, look, we can definitely coexist. Give me and Playmaker a chance. We've beaten the odds with other things before where we shouldn't have been able to win, and I think we can show the world that, yes, coexistence is a good thing. And then they're explaining to him how the odds of one person in billions of people across the world are extremely unlikely to be able to cause any kind of change, etc., etc. And then we quickly find out this was all just a stall tactic to lure Playmaker into finding I so they can trap Playmaker. That was essentially what they were doing, which comes across to me as very diabolical. It shows that these Ignises don't even necessarily show a lot of loyalty to each other. Windy, even when we were first introduced to him, very much came across as a character who was somewhat manipulative, somewhat playful. Now, going back to what I was saying earlier about Bowman, the other thing that stands out to me about this is Bowman was existing within the AI space that Windy created. That was where Playmaker and I had to go in order to try and investigate him, right? And then he mysteriously disappeared into there once. They find him in there once. Then he mysteriously disappears from within there again. It has to make you wonder if maybe somehow or another they were potentially using Bowman in order to lure Yusaku in so they could get in contact with I again to either find him or eliminate him because they see him as an opposing faction or something along those lines. Or if somehow, Bowman's being controlled as him and they're using him to try and spark a war. The way sometimes people will use, an outside catalyst to spark a conflict that they want to happen. That way they can still seem like the good guys to their own side. For example, in this case, we've got Aqua and the Earth Ignis who are coming across as being, neutral at this point. We don't know where Aqua is, and the Earth Ignis has basically said he's going to side with her, and he's not sure where he particularly stands, but once more, he'll likely side with her. So if you have an outside catalyst being manipulated that takes the form of a human, such as Bowman, that can work for you, that also appears to be going after Ignises to some extent, then, you're suddenly creating the character that would drive eyes like Earth and Aqua to be like, oh, you're right, humans are violent towards us, maybe we'll join with you. So, I don't see a lot of connections being there between Bowman and the Ignis, but I do think it would be a very interesting twist for him to turn out to be a puppet to just help start the conflict that Windy and Lightning want to see happen. The other thing that we find out here is Lightning's incredibly quick in moving, and going back to that whole scene where we saw Jin's consciousness data snatched, that did happen rather quickly. I mean, it wasn't like flash speed, but it was still very quick nonetheless. Now, moving on from that, after Playmaker does get captured, he's essentially trying to talk to Windy and be like, look, I promise you, I'm not trying to hunt them. The people respect me, and I'm thoroughly convinced I can get us to work on coexistence. They're not having any of that, and they're actually basically about to destroy I, and who knows what they're going to do to Playmaker if they're going to destroy one of their own, because they said they were going to tear him apart into his basic core data and then just absorb it, which I think leads us to where the conflicts between the Ignises are probably going to come into play, and likely how they're going to add some weight to the battles between these characters, is that the ability to turn people into data, essentially. If they can do it to the AIs, I wouldn't be surprised if they might be able to do it with two people as well when they're within that context. But anyway, what actually ends up saving both Yusaku and I in this case is Revolver, ironically enough. He launches an all-out assault along the Knights of Hanoi, like, no joke. We see the space just get flat-out invaded, we see the Knights walking with flames coming up behind them in the space that they've created, and Revolver's like, I'm here, I mean business, and I'm going to carry out my father's wishes and eliminate you. Now, funny enough, even with everything he's seen, Yusaku does manage to maintain that typical main protagonist, I see the light and all this type of thing, despite being really edgy, which I thought was good in that it keeps that core hero value to him, but I feel like it lacks a slight bit of sincerity that some of our previous main protagonists have had, because they haven't had that lighter side to him. Even Yami Yugi, when he was doing those things, he had a certain amount more genuineness towards friendship, towards caring for other people, and he had modern day Yugi within him as well that had that sort of genuineness, when I would argue he's probably our other most edgy protagonist. Him and Yusei, both of whom still had that lighter side, whereas Yusaku's always really edgy. But anyway, he's still pleading to both sides. Revolver just saved his life from these eyes who were about to likely do some terrible things to him as well, and he's still like, look, we can make this work, there's no reason for anybody to get hurt. And also, we see that Yusaku's grown some as a character here, because he acknowledges the fact that Revolver is not going to listen to a word he says because he's dead cut on revenge, and that is blinding his moves. Now, the dialogue he uses, I forget the exact lines, but it mirrors the dialogue he used to use when he was going after the Knights of Hanoi himself. So he seems to acknowledge the fact that revenge, and being a vessel of revenge, inherently clouds your thoughts, your vision, makes you think illogically, and prevents you from seeing the best way to possibly handle a situation. So that was just some good character development on his part. I'm going to be curious to see how he handles this, because once more, after we had that flashback scene to the fact that, Yusaku and Revolver had met in real life at one point, they bonded a little bit over dueling all prior to the Lost incident, it comes across to me very much that there's definitely a soft side he still holds toward Revolver. He does seem to still hold out a little bit of a soft spot to him. I mean, after all, Revolver's the guy who gave him enough hope to survive through the Lost incident to begin with, but at the same time, Yusaku's also still got a lot of connections to Ai, who's not going to want to see his friends wiped out either. So with that being the case, I think we're going to see Yusaku hold into a very split direction. I'm excited to see this, because this isn't really a direction we've seen Yu-Gi-Oh! Take before in terms of its main protagonist, where they've been in a divided direction. We've seen it happen in the case, like the closest case we probably have is Zexal. On the whole, the show has actually reminded me a lot more of Zexal the further we get in that Yuma, when it came to the Barian War, he didn't want to hurt the Barians at all, but he didn't want to see his friends get hurt either, and the Barians were essentially hunting his friends. So I guess, on the other hand, this is pretty similar to that, which isn't a bad thing. The Barian Onslaught arc of Zexal was very good. If you've never seen that and you're watching this, I'd advise trying to sit through Zexal so you can get to that part, because if you've seen the rest of the show, there is a big payoff there, and this is very much mirroring that, in that you have a main character that isn't clearly on one side or the other, but is more so just trying to act as the peacemaker. And I always think when you have that multi-faction type of conflict, it adds a lot of depth to it. Back to the topic of Revolver here. His avatar within Link Vrains has changed. Now you can see his actual eye color, the hair has become gray, etc. I'm wondering if this is just supposed to be a symbolic representation of the fact that he is mourning the loss of his father, or whether he just feels more confident and more outright and more bold in showing his true form, and now that he's fighting these eyes and he's driven by his aggression and his anger. It's hard to say, but either way, I like his new look a good bit. I was never really sold on the original one. I didn't think he looked super fantastic. I thought he lacked a little bit of that edge I usually like in the rival design that this is added back in, and the gray hair aesthetic that we got with like Akaba Reiji is a little bit there again, only with far more of our classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Spikeliness. So that was really interesting to see as well. Next, we're going to go back to when I and Windy and Lightning were talking about the Ignises as well, and I brought up the concept of Aqua. We find out that she disappeared right before Cyber's world was destroyed. Now, I doubt the writers are throwing that in just coincidentally. Seems to me that one of a number of different things happened, or something I'm not even generating in terms of idea-wise. Part of me wonders if she somehow was aware of the destruction and she escaped it beforehand. If somehow, because she was aware of the destruction, whoever destroyed Cyber's world removed her from the picture so that she couldn't warn the others. Or, the most diabolical of these, I'm wondering if the whole destruction was more a ploy by Lightning and Windy to begin with in order to trigger anger amongst the earlier AIs, sort of acting as that catalyst like what I described with Bowman earlier, in order for them to be able to be like, hey, the humans destroyed our world. Now we have a reason to attack them, when really they're just they're trying to blame it on someone who didn't actually do it in order to spark the conflict they want. Heck, for all we know, maybe the direction that they're going is it's going to turn out Bowman's the one that destroyed it, when Bowman once more could just be a pawn of Lightning and Windy. And that way it's, hey, human destroyed it, we're attacking human, etc. So with that being the case, I'm wondering if maybe Aqua caught on to that and they didn't want her spreading the word. It comes across the way that they're depicting the timeline right now in terms of the events of Cyber's world's destruction, and when Aqua was talking about its destruction, they were very, very close. I'm wondering if she was gradually picking up on the details, and then when she figured them out, they nixed her right before she could tell people. Or it could be any number of other things. Perhaps she disappeared to go warn somebody. Perhaps she hasn't shown back up into the picture because she finds herself split between the two sides. She doesn't want to hurt her friends, but at the same time she believes what they are doing is wrong. So it's going to be interesting to see where Aqua ends up coming up in this. So far, she's the AI I'm the most intrigued by, given her ability to seem to be able to foretell things to some extent, and the fact that she hasn't shown up yet. So I have a feeling she's going to be a major plot device a little bit later on the show. So just to wrap things up a little bit here, I think we have a lot to look forward to going forward. We've essentially got at least a 3-faction conflict going on, in that we've got the AIs, we've got the Knights of Hanoi, and then we've got Yusaku, and most likely Soulburn is going to be right there along with him, and Kusanagi. They're trying to prevent them from having an all-out war within Link Vrains. At least that's the impression we're under as of right now, when Yusaku's being held captive. Then we've got Bowman, where we don't know where he falls. For all we know, he's with the AIs. For all that we know, he's going to end up with Hanoi, considering at least the motivation we're getting, the impression we're getting for them, I mean, is that they're both trying to destroy AIs, so maybe they figure the enemy of my enemy is my friend type of a thing. Or once more, maybe he's a puppet of the eyes, etc., etc. And then we've got, Soul Tech, and then you've got Akira, who kind of works for Soul Tech, but kind of follows his own agenda, along with Emma and Aoi, who go with them. Then Go Onizuka, who makes some of his own decisions, but technically works for Akira. So we've got a little bit of a mess going on in terms of the sides that we've got. But I think that keeps it really interesting, because it adds a lot of depth to the plot. You don't really know where things are going to fall because there's so many outside pieces that have yet to be figured out yet. So with all that being said, guys, that about concludes my thoughts on the episode. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below. And what do you think's coming next? Where do you think all these outside characters like Go, Aoi, Emma, Akira, Bowman, etc., where are they going to fall in this conflict? Are they going to be a side of their own? Or are they going to take one of the 3 existing sides we already have? Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and I'll catch you guys next time.